So welcome everybody. I'd like to call the December 14th, 2020 West Sacramento Environment and Utilities Commission meeting to order. Pursuant to the Governor's Executive Order N2920, members of the Environment and Utilities Commission and staff are meeting via teleconference to reduce the spread of COVID-19 virus. Members of the public have been invited to watch the meeting via Wave Cable Channel 20 or streaming online through the city's website. Tonight's agenda and all agenda materials are available on the city's website on the Environment and Utilities Commission page. All public comments submitted by 5 p.m. via email to the Environment and Utilities clerk are available for consideration and are posted to the city website along with the agenda and link to the live stream video of this meeting so that all commissioners and community members can see the complete text and submittal information. The commission clerk will note the commenters for each item and the comments shall become part of the public meeting record. With that, we'll proceed with tonight's agenda. First up, we have our general administration function part 1. This is presentations by the public on matters not on the agenda within the jurisdiction of the commission. Do we have anything?
There are no comments on this item.
Okay. And disclosure of ex parte communications. Do any of the commissioners have any ex parte communications that they need to disclose at this time? You just shake your head no. Okay. All right. So consent agenda. Consideration of approval of the minutes of the October 12th, 2020 Environment and Utilities Commission. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll second that. All right. And then the next agenda item is consideration of resolution 20-2, establishing the date, time, and location for the 2021-2022 regular meetings of the West Sacramento Environment and Utilities Commission. Ben, do you have something to say on that, or do we just vote on that?
There's no presentation on this item.
Okay. Did everybody get a chance to review it? The schedule? Yes? Okay. Does anybody have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve the schedule for the 21-22 year.
I'll second it. All right, great. Thank you. On to our regular agenda items. So we have consideration of the draft storm. Oh.
We're going to have to do a roll call vote on the.
Oh, right. Yes.
Commissioner Green?
Aye.
Commissioner Criswell?
Here.
Was that an aye?
Aye, sorry.
Commissioner Petrie?
Aye.
Chair Cordero?
Cordano, sorry. Aye. Did we get everyone?
Yes, now we can move forward.
Okay, great. All right, regular agenda, consideration of the draft storm drainage and stormwater master plan. Do we have a presentation on this?
Yes. Is this where I take over, Ben, with your permission?
Yes, feel free to take over the screen.
Okay. Oh, sure. Okay. Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. Excuse me 1 second. Let me move something here that's in my way. My name is Candido Ramirez. I work for the Community Development Department, specifically the Development Engineering section. I am here to present an update on the stormwater and storm drainage master plan, which was previously managed by my predecessor, Wendy Williams. And now I get to continue on with this baton. Let's see. So this effort began in spring of 2017, and since then, staff has presented the TMI to this commission and also City Council multiple times. From a drainage perspective, this report describes North Basin and also the South Basin. So these two specific basins are referred to a lot in this presentation and also in the report itself. And basically the separation between these two basins is the deep water ship channel. The North Basin was not subject to master planning prior to the city being incorporated in 1987. So most of the infrastructure is undersized, and we're talking stormwater pipes and detention basins. Subsequently, it has higher probability of flooding. The South Basin is the newer development, and that basin was subject to master planning, and therefore most of the infrastructure is properly sized, and there's lower probability of flooding. The city of West Sacramento has multiple stakeholders, basically, including its constituents. So the main stakeholders are shown here: City of West Sacramento, Reclamation District 900, 537, Caltrans, School District, and an HOA. The city owns and maintains most of the drainage inlets and pipes throughout the city, on both and south of the channel. And the reclamation districts, predominantly 900, own and maintain most of the canals and channels and pump stations. I found this interesting graph or figure, which I think summarizes stormwater runoff before management and after. I'm sorry, before development and after development. So in its natural state, stormwater, for the most part, depending on soil, will absorb and infiltrate into the ground. And any remaining runoff, any surface runoff, goes directly into the streams or river or creek. With development, there's an increase of imperviousness, so increase of rooftops, concrete, sidewalks, and roads. And so that increases the rate and also the volume of runoff, volume of stormwater that doesn't go into the ground. So some of it goes into the ground, a lower percentage goes into the ground, and the remaining runs off into the adjacent channels or pipe systems that exist. So for the North Basin, as I said previously, there was minimal infrastructure that was planned and implemented, and therefore you'll see later on that there are more systems on a North Basin that are deficient with regards to capturing stormwater, and also deficient in treating water quality, because they're related. For the South Basin, this is any excess runoff is better managed. I should point here because there were numerous detention bases that have been built for the past 30 years or so, and therefore, again, the South Basin is less likely to have flooding issues. I need to, excuse me a second here. Okay. I had issues with this slide here, so I had to toggle back to the full slide. But essentially, this is it simply documents the parameters, the primary parameters and criteria that were used in the hydrology and hydraulics model, which then provided the quantities of stormwater for the drainage system. I'll go back to excuse me a second here. Sorry. Okay. So the overall considerations for stormwater management are quantity and excuse me. Stormwater management involves quantity and quality, and basically what that means is any additional runoff transports debris, and therefore it impacts quality. A point that will be emphasized a little more later is that the order of projects that are implemented matters. So for the most part, any projects that are done at the upstream end of a shed, affect downstream projects. So once we commit to an upstream project in a certain shed, we pretty much have to commit to the downstream projects in order to properly mitigate it. Some other considerations will be coordinating with reclamation districts, school district, Caltrans, and an HOA. And the biggest consideration will be funding, which we'll get to at the end. So the hydraulic and hydrology model revealed numerous drainage systems that need additional capacity or storage. The South Basin, as I said earlier, was planned, but the parameters and criteria that we used recently do trigger the need to upsize some facilities. It's about a dozen culvert upsizings, and also we identified a pump station that would need to increase capacity. And let's see here. Let me go over to this exhibit. This exhibit has shows the drainage culverts and pipes that need to be upsized. They're shown in green. And like I said, we have about a dozen or so throughout the South Basin that need to be upgraded. And the pump station that needs to be upsized a bit is one at the corner of Stonegate and Lake Washington Boulevard. I'm going to go back to the other slide here. So that was the South Basin. For the North Basin, there was a much greater need for system upgrades. And I'm going to go, I'm going to forward to several slides, so bear with me. And it's basically to show figure 11-1. And slide 18. This slide here. this is perhaps the most important slide of this presentation. So all the work that's been done up to now basically identifies the areas in blue here. Those are the most likely to flood. And I'm going to go over with you one of the systems, which is for this general area here, that would need to be upgraded. That example can be used for the remaining systems throughout the North Basin. So let me go back to the other, pick up where I left off at. Okay. So this this slide, just figure 911 in the report, is just west of I-80. Here's I-80. Here's CHP, and IKEA's right in here somewhere. Okay. So the model shows that we would need to upgrade this pump station, which discharges to the Tule Canal. We would also need to upgrade, upsize the drainage culvert. So the existing drainage culvert that crosses underneath I-80, just west of IKEA, that's currently 7.5 feet in diameter. We would need to add another one equal in size to provide sufficient capacity. And most of the culverts along this stretch would also be upgraded. This next one at Harbor Boulevard, and then beyond that, upstream of that would be the open drainage canals. So the next slide that I'll show you is right next to the right-hand side or east of this location. Again, I think that there's a bit of an overlap. So I already talked about this culvert and then this canal here. Those need to be upgraded. So the report calls for this canal to be widened by 15 feet, which is, it's a significant improvement and recommendation. And just following the same drainage system, most of the culverts do need to be upgraded. Again, they're shown in red here. So this exhibit or this figure leads us to that potential flood area that I showed you just a minute ago. It was figure 11.1. This area shows a likelihood of it being flooded. We would definitely, like I said, we would need to replace this culvert system and the canals and other culvert systems downstream of this location. I'll come back to the cost of these a little later. But now we're going to talk about the existing pump stations and potential factors that go into considering replacing pump stations and detention basins and culverts. Most of the pump stations are fairly old, and some need some form of upgrade, whether it's electrical systems, communications, or doors, or whatever it may be. Some need some form of upgrade because they have been neglected for the most part. Some do need upsizing, but the problem with the challenge with upsizing is that they also need to remain operational. So usually what that means is we have to acquire an adjacent piece of land to construct the facility required to for the subsize. And so that leads to, again, right-of-way acquisition, and it leads to increased schedule and cost. And actually, I just went over over what I just said here at the bottom. Detention basins, I'll go back and forth between this and the next slide, but there are two types of detention basins. The one on the left-hand side here, this is called a dry detention basin. And an example of that is at Summerfield Park. And on the right-hand side is a wet detention basin. And these two are located on each side of Lake Washington, just west of Stonegate. So the characteristics distinguishing these two types of basins are, for a dry basin, it is multi-purpose use. It retains stormwater in the winter, and it can be used for recreation in the remaining seasons. It typically has lower pumping cost, operational cost, because it's used infrequent, and also has lower maintenance cost. For the wet detention basin, it is basically a single purpose basin. It does detain water all year long. A positive or benefit to this is that they are typically an estuary habitat. The wet detention basins have higher pumping cost and also higher maintenance cost. So detention basins can still be planned and are planned basically for build out of the South Basin. However, they are a challenge to plan for in the North Basin due to limited available land. I want to stress here that any of the exhibits that you've seen on the report do show some possible basin locations on the north side, but there has been no commitment or discussion with owners on potentially placing basins there. So there is a lot of flexibility and time to locate those where it's feasible. Another tool for stormwater storage is our underground valves, and they basically can be used. The same land can be used for multi-purpose. So for the entire year, basically, we build them underground, cover them up, and then use the surface for a park or whatever the need may be, even a road. But a drawback to this is, where's it at here? Maybe in the report. Drawback to this is cost. These are typically 2.5 to 3 times as much as the previous detention basins that I talked about. So we may be forced to consider some of these, but cost will be a significant factor. So most of the channel widenings or canal widenings that would be done are under the jurisdiction of RD 900. They are a good source for conveyance storage and managing runoff. And they're easy to access, but they're also expensive to maintain. One of the first steps that we would have to take before considering widening some of these channels, especially that first one that I mentioned, we'd have to widen it 15 feet. So basically that would be about twice the width of this channel here. And so we would have to verify right away. We'd have to make sure that we can accommodate a maintenance access road and perhaps combine it with a trail. And also consider the impacts to other utilities, because utilities are everywhere. If we have to relocate utilities, there may be a need to pay for them. And lastly, most importantly, I think, is environmental impacts. We need to evaluate those closely. Pipe and culvert upsize are also a challenge. I think the biggest impact is to traffic. If we have to do an open trench, basically excavate the surface above the culvert or the surface where the culvert is going to be, then you're looking at significant impacts, again, to the traffic and also neighborhood. In some cases, there's opportunity to construct these using trenchless methods. Again, they're costly. Trenchless is costly, but it is a good option in order to mitigate some impacts. So Chapter 11 of the improvement program includes this table here, which is the criteria that was used to rank the projects. And what the consultant and the city staff used were they considered evacuation corridors. They considered critical facilities. They considered flood complaints and social equity, and also the magnitude of the structures. Let me elaborate on that in case you. So this last one here basically is the flood area, which is on the next exhibit here. The flood area, and then we count the number of buildings within that flood area, regardless of whether they're residential or commercial, industrial, and then we divide it by 100. So this criteria, this factor here, has the biggest impact on the ranking. So graphically, what you'll see here in red are the evacuation corridors, the main roadways: West Capitol, Harbor, Jefferson, Sacramento Avenue. It also, the map also has critical facilities in this mustard color, and those were identified by planning and other city staff. As I said before, the blue areas are the areas that are most likely to inundate in the 100-year flood, 100-year storm, I'm sorry. And the other factor in that previous table was the disadvantaged communities. So a good portion of the North Basin, with the exception of the Bridge District and State Streets. So with those exceptions, most of the North Basin is considered disadvantaged community. So let me back up here. So this, I keep going to this, this figure here. It identifies what engineers call a node. So it's a point in the system, and it's called 81M619. But if we go to this next table here, it also includes that flood area node, 81M619. So this table here has the composite criticality composite score. I apologize. And it identifies basically the highest ranked, most important project in the city. And it's within this Hobson Avenue and Bright Avenue area. I think it may be redundant to go back to, well, here, I'll do it here. I'll go back there in a second to the other figures. Okay. So this table here, again, shows that same project, the same composite score, and it shows what the cost for that individual project would be to basically just replace a small segment of a pipe. It's $2.1 million. But as I said earlier, this particular project is at the upstream end of this shed basin. So in order for this project to be beneficial, we need to upgrade all the projects downstream of this location. So all those other projects are listed in this cell here: Arbor Boulevard, culvert upsizings, channel expansion, and there's, as you can see, there are 5 other projects. So the combination of all those projects is almost $8 million. Let me go back because I don't see any yawning, so that's good. So I can show you graphically again. So that project that I mentioned is this Bright Avenue pipe upsize. That's this first pipe here of the system. And there would be, in order for this to be beneficial, we'd have to upsize and improve the system downstream. So all these culverts and pipes would have to be upsized. Again, that channel and the culverts west of this location. And if we continue backwards here, that culvert at Interstate 80. And also, lastly, would be the pump station that dumps into Tule Canal. So I hope that was clear. Okay, now we get to the cost. The current estimate in the report is that the city on the North Basin would have a bill for $114 million. RD900 for their channel widenings and also for the pump station upgrades would be about $50 million. And Caltrans has a couple of facilities that they're $4 million. There is another section in the report that discusses maintenance, and it's about $3 million. But I want to elaborate a little bit on maintenance. It's based on the consultant's assessment of a very limited assessment of manholes and pipes that are greater than 21-inch diameter. So that's, again, it was a selected segment of infrastructure. So this number could potentially go up in the future. There was not enough money in the budget to do a thorough evaluation of the system throughout citywide. So for the North Basin, we're looking at a total of $171 million. The South Basin, which is in much better shape, would be $24 billion. And so you can see the total there of $195 million. There's no way, another way to put it, but there's basically no funding for any improvements on the North Basin. The South Basin future improvements will be funded by impact fees, but there are some improvements that are not related to development, and those would have to be funded out of this potential program. Citywide O&M, I think I've seen some numbers. For the most part, I think they get about $170 million a year to maintain drainage systems. So it doesn't go far. So what's coming up here is a financing study, and we will look to see what fee structure we can put together to pay for these $195 million basically worth of improvements. So I don't want to get too far into the solution, but that's what the study is going to reveal. And I suspect there'll be a need for significant public outreach when that time comes. So at this presentation, we're looking for qualitative comments on anything really. But I'd be curious to see what types of detention basins you would be inclined to support, whether they're dry or wet detention basins, or whether underground vaults would be favorable. And also any input on ranking the projects. It's a bit, I guess it's a bit complicated, the ranking system criteria that we had on there, but I think it is clear once if you read it thoroughly. If you have any funding options or suggestions, we're definitely welcome to provide them at any time. I think that's it. Oh, so I'll present a similar presentation to the City Council as soon as possible at the beginning of the year, and hopefully finalize this report within a month after that, and either concurrently or after that solicit proposals for the financing and implementation study. That study will likely take at least a year, maybe more. And we can also begin the community workshops or outreach to inform the public. So we may return to the commissions and council after the report is finalized. That does it. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody have any comments? I will start. I have a few. Talking about the basins, as someone who lives in that northern portion of the city, you know, one of our big complaints, especially those of us that are parents, is that we have a lack of really good parks. So dry basins would be really beneficial because they would kind of meet that need that we already have of places that we can go and take our kids to do things like soccer practice or run around and things like that. And also, you know, I don't know if you're considering with dry basins, maybe like retooling existing parks. I mean, there's some beautiful parks up in that Bright area that with these large fields, and I don't know if they're already used as detention basins or not, but you know, that would be beneficial, I think. I live near I live on Rock Rose Road, so that's, you know, we don't really have any parks around us. We have one by the school. So it'd be nice to see something else. And then also you're talking about like prioritizing, and I think the prioritization scheme you guys have is really smart. You know, that Bright area, my child goes to school in that area, and you know, there were a lot of talks when they built the charter school over there about like what to do about flooding and things like that. So, you know, I think that's a good area for us to focus on. And then also, you know, it's understandable that you have to do the downstream first. I mean, I work for the Division of Water Quality at the State Water Board, so I understand that how that works. And so it's a difficult project because I think you're going to get a lot of community feedback, like, why didn't you start here first? And just, you know, having worked with watersheds and things like that, I just, you know, just want to say that you will get some negative feedback about however you prioritize. But I do think that the way you guys have decided, you know, meets a lot of not only local goals, but like state goals with disadvantaged communities. And as for funding, I don't know if you have looked into the SIGMA program, the Sustainable Groundwater Management Grant Program through the state of California. I am not an expert at it, but I know that, you know, they do provide funding for certain improvements in certain municipalities, or for municipalities across state. So that might be something that you could look into. So that's pretty much all my comments.
Thank you.
Does anybody else have anything? Any thoughts on detention basins? They wanted some input. Go ahead.
Yeah, this is Matt Criswell. I agree. I like the dry basin idea. I've gone out to Summerfield Park. It makes a nice park, you know, in the non-rainy season. So I think that is a good thing for the community, a dual benefit there. I did have one question around that maintenance cost of $2.7 million that was on the slide a couple of slides ago. Can you say more about what that is? Is that an ongoing cost? Is that per year, or is that a one-time fixing things that you encounter that are broken, or what is that?
Thanks for that's a good question. It is a one-time O&M to fix the infrastructure that they recommended improvements that they assessed. I'm sorry. The annual O&M is separate from this report, and that's a different effort that we'll have to coordinate closely with Public Works to and also the consultant before we figure out the financing.
I have one other comment too. I agree with the comment that was made around kind of public outreach and education, because I think people have a natural understanding that, okay, there's these big levees there and that keeps, you know, the whole area from flooding, or that's one of the big things that keeps the area from flooding. But I think people don't have as natural an intuition about stormwater runoff. You know, where does it go and the capacities that are associated with that, and infiltration, all that stuff. And so I think people kind of think that the levees are kind of the main thing, and they say, well, we have reclamation districts and they just do everything. But then as a city develops, it's less about reclamation and more about drainage canals and pipes and pumps and culverts and everything. So I think there is a bit of learning curve for any members of the public on what are the new emerging needs that come out of that. And then along with that is ongoing costs, both as capital outlays and maintenance, continuing maintenance.
Yeah, good points.
Yeah, I think I agree with the commissioner because, you know, a while back we did, you know, had to approve some or recommend to council that we do some fee adjustments. And, you know, I heard locally from friends and family, and I had to really explain to them why we were doing these fee adjustments for their utilities. And it was a big outreach. You know, I know people who even called the city about it. They were angry. So I think, you know, making sure that maybe all commissioners are aware of what's going on, so we can all, you know, of all the commissions, so we can all be advocates to help with it, because I think that this is a real need. Like I said, in the area I live in, you know, since day one, I moved in fall, and it was rainy the year I moved in, and we've had flooding issues. And so, you know, if we have a huge storm, I can see that that's going to be a big issue. So, you know, I think this is really important to our community, especially in this northern portion of West Sacramento. So I think outreach is going to be really key. And then, sorry, I'm just thinking of funding. I don't know if you've contacted, you know, the state water board or the regional water boards. So, you know, there are people that might be able to direct you guys to funding options. So I know you haven't done the funding analysis yet, but that's kind of an opportunity. State water board has a division of financial assistance, and so they have a number of programs within that. So you know, that's a good place to look to.
Good. Thank you.
One more, because obviously we haven't got too in-depth about funding, but that's going to be part of the conversation, that we quantified the problem, right, in very thorough detail. Is there some ideas or scalable options where instead of hitting a home run with getting everything for the 100-year flood, in the meantime, until we get that, we get some areas that flood, you know, almost every year per se, you know, and kind of like some small and easy improvements that can get the ball rolling, that are the low-hanging fruit. Is that part of the conversation?
No, it hasn't. It hasn't taken place yet, but I think it does need to take place soon. In the early stage of this financing study, and perhaps soon after council and commissions like yourself are aware of the costs, because they are significant. And if we come across stumbling blocks or there's no funding anywhere, then we'll definitely have to make some decisions. So that's a good point.
And just another question. I mean, you know, interim measures, I don't know if there's, you know, I know we don't have a large general fund, but, you know, maybe some sort of park maintenance or something, if we're talking about dry basins, just, you know, something that can ease the burden on those areas in the meantime. You know, it is a concern in that Bright area, and they do have, you know, some larger areas there that could act as dry basins if they're not already. And I don't know if that's something that we can consider as just some sort of park upkeep or maintenance or changes that can even just, you know, methods of maintaining the park that could help with that, ease the burden in the interim as we, you know, the city looks for funding.
Yes, I think you bring up another good point. And parks wasn't mentioned a whole lot other than their potential involvement with these dry basins, but we definitely need to engage them soon. to and review their master plan and to see whether these potential sites fit into a potential update to the master plan. Because I think the dry detention basins are highly preferable whenever there is real estate. And even if there's no real estate, if it's dependent on the use, there may be a possibility to relocate those users. Yeah.
I just had a quick comment and then some questions about potential funding options. I support both the dry and the wet basin options. I live over by the wet basins at the intersection of Lake Washington and Stonegate, and I know that those basins are frequented and enjoyed very much by the neighborhoods that are in proximity there. A lot of people run and walk around the basins, just very much enjoyed by the community. And then with regard to my questions for potential funding, in the agenda report on page 4, there was some commentary about project developers who potentially install improvements that they would be eligible for reimbursement if those improvements benefited more than just their project. Would those reimbursements be full or partial?
They are proportionate to, they're partial. Again,
they'd be partial. Okay. I was wondering if there was, like a cost savings component to the city there, if it was just a deferred cost, being that there was that reimbursement element.
Mm-hmm.
And then secondly, with regard to the North Basin, and I know that's where most of the needed improvements are, do we know how many of those could possibly be paired with other road or park improvements? Because I know that makes the grant funding a little bit more of a viable option. Has that assessment happened by chance?
No, it hasn't, but there are a lot of roads in the city that do need upgrades. So I think that could probably be a factor, and maybe it will be. We'll look at road condition and also the number of utilities in that particular road. If there's minimal utilities, then that would be a good candidate for
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? All right. Well, thank you very much. Hope it was beneficial.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so we will move on to our next item, consideration of a report on commercial organics recycling and an overview of Senate Bill 1383, short-lived climate pollutants.
Good evening, Chair Cardano and Commissioners. I'm Susan Strand. I'm an administrative analyst with the Environmental Services Division of the Community Development Department. I'm presenting to you tonight on the current status of commercial organic recycling compliance and to provide you with the overview of upcoming Senate Bill 1383 regulations that will go into effect January 1st, 2022. So I'll start off by giving you some background information on the current commercial organic recycling requirements under SB 1826. On April 1st, 2016, AB 1826 went into effect, requiring some businesses and multifamily properties with 5 or more units to recycle all or a portion of their organic waste. AB 1826 defines organic waste as food waste, food soiled paper, landscape debris, and clean wood waste. And currently, businesses that generate 2 or more cubic yards of solid waste weekly, which includes other trash, their recycling and organic waste combined, have to have an organic recycling program. though there are some exemptions that exist. And multifamily properties with 5 or more units that are generating 2 yards or more of solid waste weekly are required to divert their landscape debris. So 1826 requires the city to implement an organic waste recycling program that requires us to identify all the threshold generators, educate them about the organic recycling requirements and how to comply, and monitor their compliance. Cal Recycle annually assesses each jurisdiction's organic recycling programs and formally reviews jurisdiction's compliance as part of a judicial review scheduled every 2 to 4 years. And because the city of West Sacramento currently, our business and multifamily compliance is not 100%, we're working with Cal Recycle staff to achieve full compliance in what is called an informal compliance program. So as part of this program, we report to Cal Recycle each quarter on business and multifamily compliance, and we've developed an implementation plan that's designed for us to achieve 100% compliance by the end of 2021. Currently, there's 974 businesses in West Sacramento and 119 multifamily properties that meet the threshold of 2 cubic yards a week. 68% of businesses, and it's a slight uptick since I wrote the agenda report, and 86% of multifamily properties are deemed compliant currently. So that brings us to Assembly Bill 1820, that brings us to, well, the reason we're working so hard on Assembly Bill 1826 is to get us ready for the Senate Bill 1383 requirements that go into effect on January 1st, 2022. Senate Bill 1383 is the most significant waste reduction mandate to be adopted in California in the last 30 years. In addition to statewide requirements to reduce organic waste, food waste, green waste, paper products disposal by 75% by 2025, and increase edible food recovery by 20% by 2025, there are specific implementation requirements for local governments. Cal Recycle has adopted regulations, and they require the city to do the following to comply with 1383. We have to provide organic waste collection service to all residents and businesses. We have to establish an edible food recovery program that recovers edible food waste from the waste stream. We have to conduct outreach and education to all affected parties, including generators, haulers, facilities, edible food recovery organizations, and city and county departments. We have to conduct capacity planning, evaluating our readiness to implement 1383, and there's some procurement requirements in the regulation. So the city will be required to purchase compost or mulch or renewable gas or some combination of those in a prescribed amount based upon our population. We will be required to inspect businesses, and we will be required to adopt an enforcement ordinance with prescribed penalty amounts. We're required to have that enforcement ordinance in place by January of 2022. And We're also required to maintain accurate and timely records for annual reporting to CalRecycle, if not more frequently. To better prepare for 1383, we have released a request for proposal for consulting services to conduct a gap analysis and prepare a compliance plan. The gap analysis will include 3 components: a compliance gap to assess where we are currently and identify actions that we have currently taken and the plans that we have in place, and to review our solid waste ordinance, our solid waste franchise agreement, related activities performed by the city's waste haulers and other waste diversion efforts within the city. We also are asking the consultant to prepare a resource gap analysis, and then we'll use the results to make recommendations for filling in for staffing, programming needs, budget needs for compliance with the regulation. And then we're asking the consultant to do a rate analysis to determine if potential rate increases are needed, fee adjustments, so that we can meet the mandates requirements. The results of the gap analysis will be used to develop the city's SB 1383 implementation plan, and will include all decisions, actions, programs, staff, technology, and other resources needed for the city to be compliant. It is expected that there will be significant budget needs and that changes in the city's exclusive franchise with waste management and the non-exclusive hauling permit program will be required to reach compliance. Throughout the planning process, and as a result of the consultant's work becoming available, we plan to regularly update the commission and request your input and direction from you and City Council. So that's just a brief overview of where we are and where we're going. And I'm open for any questions.
Anybody have any questions? Go ahead, Matt.
Okay, hi. Thanks for that information. I have some information. I have a question and a comment regarding COVID impact. Is there any provision or any decision space at the local level to take into account the small businesses that are impacted by COVID more heavily? So if you look at, Walmart or something, they're obviously not as impacted as a small restaurant or something of that nature. And I was glad to see that there is some time before the enforcement goes into effect. I guess it said by the end of 2021. And so that, was one positive indication I saw. But is there any other things like waiving fees for anybody by either some criteria or proving that, that they were impacted by the COVID situation?
Yes, that is something that we're really concerned about. It's making it difficult for us to reach businesses because a lot of businesses aren't open, and then this is an additional cost for businesses to add an additional service. So we're really sensitive to the fact that we're asking businesses to take on a new cost at a time when they could be hurting financially. So we're working with CalRecycle on that. We have brought this up numerous times with them, and they seem sensitive to that. And so we're hoping that in the next year the COVID situation improves. I know that it may take a while for the financial impacts to catch up with that. With regard to the ordinance, the penalties don't actually have to be enforced until 2024. We have to have the ordinance in place by January 1st, 2022, but the enforcement component doesn't go into effect until 2024. So that is a little bit of reprieve. Yeah, and then, like I said, there are some exemptions for right now. If a business isn't generating a lot of organic waste, then they may be eligible for an exemption and won't have to add that service. As 1383 goes into effect, the amount of waste a business can generate without subscribing to service decreases. But so there's, the next year they have a little bit of reprieve until those stricter exemption requirements go into effect. So I hope that is a little bit helpful.
Yeah, that was helpful. And, I assume that's part of the conversation too, is that some of the waste streams have actually dramatically declined. And so maybe we can kind of recognize those reductions and we'll just set ourselves up to be ready for the post-COVID world when everybody wants to go out to eat again and is able to go out, and massive increases in waste streams after that.
Yeah.
So thank you. Yeah, that was very helpful.
Oh, good. Yeah, you're absolutely right. A lot of businesses have downgraded their service currently. And then with food takeout, a lot of the waste, there's a lot of takeout waste, but that's at residential homes. So services have maybe gone up, or the volumes have gone up at homes. So. Does anybody else have any questions?
Commissioner Jennifer, go ahead. Commissioner Green, sorry.
Thank you. And I apologize if you already touched on this. I know the regulations don't go into effect until January 1st, 2022, but does the city have a tentative timeline for when they will release the implementation plan or publish it?
So we are reviewing consultant proposals currently. We're hoping that we have a consultant hired this spring as fast as we can, and then depending on how long it takes for them to create an implementation plan. But hopefully, currently we have an implementation plan for 1826 that we've been working with the state on, and that kind of brings us closer in some regard. So we have a plan to have the ordinance begin working on it and then adopt it in the fourth quarter of next year. So sorry, anyway, for 1383, we're just looking to the consultant now. As they do their assessments, we should have more information on that in the coming months, and then we will be reporting back to you on that.
That's great. Thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome.
Any more questions? No? Okay. Thank you, Susan. Appreciate it.
Oh, you're
all
welcome.
Right.
Thanks.
Okay, we're going to move on to General Administration Function Part 2. The Environment and Utilities Commission calendar, the next regular meeting is scheduled for April 13th, 2021. The agenda that was sent out had December 14th today, but it's April 13th. Okay, and then do we have any reports from city staff?
No, not at this time. I do want to clarify though, is the next meeting April or is it in February?
It should be February 8th, 2021.
Okay, I was confused about that too. So the resolution document says April 13th.
So resolution 20-1 actually encompassed the February meeting.
Oh, okay.
We didn't
So
have to
it's
have
in
it.
February. So it's in February. And then it's, what is it? February
8th, 2021.
February 8th, 2021. So that's our next one. So don't listen to me. It's not in April.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paulina.
I was like, wait a minute. I don't have any reports this time, thanks.
Thank you. Okay, future agenda item requests by commissioners. Does anybody have a future agenda item request? No? Okay. All right, so then I think that's it for tonight, and we will adjourn. So thank you, everybody. Have a good night. Happy holidays, everybody.
Thank you. Happy holidays.
Bye.
Happy holidays.
Thanks. Bye.